This meeting of the JMRL Board Budget Finance Committee will come to order. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Don't think we have any remote participants.
No, just staff.
Okay. All right, so first item is our discussion of the draft fiscal year 27 JMRL budget. I trust everybody got the handouts, version 1 and version 2. And I'm going to now pass the buck to people who actually know what the difference is between version 1 and version 2. I know what the version is, but it's somebody who can explain it better than I can.
Me bring them. Paper copies.
Right, if you need them.
Okay, so you're looking at two versions of a proposed draft budget, version 1 and version 2. And the main difference is that version 1 includes all of the recommendations from the Personnel Committee that made it through their process. Version 2 includes a very limited amount of those requests. So I will go through what did and didn't make it from the Personnel Committee. So there were other requests, as I mentioned to the full board the other day, that didn't make it past the Personnel Committee. This is just what Personnel Committee is recommending. So the first is secure funding to continue positive progression on JMRL's pay scale. So that remains, it's reflected in both of these. Both of these budgets in front of you include the same strategy that was used coming into fiscal year 26, which was a 5% increase to the pay scale and then a 2% raise for staff on top of that, passing along the pay scale raise to staff as well. So this is the same as what we did this current year, and that's the starting point for talking about next year. After that, the recommendations in order of priority from the Personnel Committee were a 25-hour web content specialist position. This would be a regional cost. It is reflected in version 1, but not version 2 of your budgets. The total cost there is $35,000. The bulk of that is an Albemarle cost at $21,000, about $8.5 for Charlottesville, at $2,000 each for Greene and Louisa, and $1,500 for Nelson.
What was that cost again? Sorry.
The overall total is $35,000.
Thank you.
If you $35,332.52. Jerry tells me never to put the cents in. It just confuses the issue. Okay, so that was the top priority of the Personnel Committee. The second was to support adding bookmobile service to Greene County. And the way that that would be accomplished is the same way we accomplished a few years ago, moving bookmobile service to Nelson and Louisa counties. It's by adding hours to a part-time employee to allow them to drive the vehicle to the county. So this would be a cost largely for Greene County. It's a little bit under $7,000 just on the personnel side. There also would be increased operational costs there of almost $8,000 for the wear, tear, maintenance on the vehicle or whatnot. So the total package there for Greene County would be somewhere around $15,000. There are some additional Albemarle and Charlottesville costs there because in order to bring this up to a full-time position, those hours for Greene County were just below 40 hours. So we added some service for Albemarle and Charlottesville, just about 2 hours a week as well. The next recommendation from the Personnel Committee was for substitute hours for the Louisa County Library for 150 annual hours for one of the positions out there. The part-time employee would give them some extra hours to work throughout the year. That was about $3,200 in the end. And to be honest, this is more a reflection of the reality of what is actually spent on this throughout the year. Frequently, they're over what we have budgeted and are looking for support.
In version 1 and version 2?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. That's an excellent question. So the bookmobile is in both of these versions, assuming that we could bring that to Greene County, Martha, and let them decide whether or not they want to fund it for this year. Okay, so the bookmobile is in both. The Louisa County cost, I believe, is only in version 1.
And web content person is in only version 1.
Correct. The next recommendation from the Personnel Committee is a reclassification of two positions at the computer lab at the Central Library. Currently, their title is Makerspace Lab Support. And the recommendation is to upgrade those to Makerspace Lab Specialists. So in JMRL's pay scale, support staff are offering basic support for library services. When this was strictly a lab monitor position, it's categorized that way. The folks that were there were largely helping members of the public sign up to use the computer. That was their big, and helping troubleshoot printing. Now with the new makerspace in that area, we're asking them to do more specialist level, which is the higher up on the JMRL pay scale. We're asking them to have some familiarity with some complex machinery, 3D printers, laser cutters, sewing machines, which is beyond me. So it's effectively recognizing that we're asking these folks to have a higher level of experience and expertise than we were previously in that position. So this is included in both. The cost is just the Charlottesville Albemarle cost. Only available for Charlottesville.
Which is it?
The total cost is $6,400. And my recommendation as I made to the Personnel Committee is that I think this is something that we could probably absorb this year in the current budget for that amount within Charlottesville and Albemarle's personnel costs. We need to budget for it next year if we're going to include it, but I do think this is something we should do now because we're already asking these folks to do this work. Okay, and then the last two recommendations for the Personnel Committee were to add 300 substitute hours for the youth services at the Northside Library. That is a total of almost $6,000. It's $5,800. And then finally, this is kind of a combination. So Lindsay and her staff submitted a few different needs in a few different departments, and the Personnel Committee was interested in trying to combine some of those into a part-time position that could work a little Swiss Army knife in a few different departments at the Northside Library. So the final recommendation for the Personnel Committee is a 20-hour branch specialist position that could do the service desk for children's, young adult, and the adult services. And that's $30,000. The bulk of that is an Albemarle cost. So those last two are not included in version 2. They're only included in version 1.
And that was central?
That's
Northside.
Side.
side for the last two,
Only in version 1.
only in version 1. So effectively, version 1 includes everything that the Personnel Committee is recommending. Version 2 only includes the bookmobile services and upgrading those makerspace positions. So nothing new. You can see what the overall differences are to the budget. So version 1's increase is 900,000. 2's is 834,000. So it's about $70,000 increase, which is not tremendous when you look at the overall picture, because our starting point for this request is large due to the compensation request that's going to be in here and the built-in 15% guess on what healthcare is going to be this year.
So I ask this question every time, but just for the record, total JMRL operational budget for this fiscal year is
For the current fiscal year,
right.
let me Google that for
I
you.
can tell you that,
Yeah,
Do you know?
including state aid is $10.8 million.
thank you.
Without state aid, so the operational one that we're asking.
And I asked that question as a relationship question we're talking $70,000 different in two budget proposals. We're talking a gnat's eyelash difference between the two for a $10.8 million budget.
Actually, Jerry, now that you're looking at it, it's already in version 1 and version 2. At the bottom
Yeah.
there's the 26 allocation.
Thank you.
It's
Yes,
9.6 there.
Right.
So the number Jerry gave included the state aid.
right. Okay, thank you. So everybody had a bigger picture of the differences we're talking about between the two proposals.
So I think so we can go, traditionally in the past, this committee has gone kind of and looked at each page. We can do that if the committee wants to do that, or we could have a broader discussion about what level of support the board is willing to kind of put their support behind before we go talk to our jurisdictional partners here. Because really the only places, so to your point, Tony, about $70,000 here and the difference between these positions, asking for them and not asking for them. Once you take that out, the operational costs at JMRL, the non-personnel operational costs were static last year. They didn't change. So not anything not related to people stayed the same. Well, this year they had to go up a little bit because things cost more now than they did in the past. So there's rising costs there. And then just the overall compensation package with an increase to the pay scale and with a 15% healthcare cost is something to be discussed. We can't negotiate the healthcare costs. We don't know what it's going to be. That's going to be
What it'll be when it comes up.
it's going to be non-negotiable.
Right.
We're not going to be able to say like, no, we're not going to pay that as an organization.
So you can say it, but then they say, well, you won't have
We
it.
have healthcare. I think our employees. Really help.
When you met with each of the jurisdictions for the preliminaries, what was the feeling that you were getting from them?
That they were concerned that the rate of revenue that they have been getting in the last few years is not going to be matched for next year. They had been seeing very high amounts of revenue coming in. They weren't expecting a recession or a huge dramatic drop off there, but they were expecting a leveling off. And we heard from the city of Charlottesville that the reason the health insurance was 30% last year was almost entirely based on claims that happened. It was just a really bad year for a lot of high dollar amount claims. They don't have the information yet, but they reported that this past year was also a very high claim number here. So we don't know what that translates to. 15%, 5 years ago, I would have said this is a very conservative estimate. 15%, but after last year's,
Yeah, I can feel like it's maybe low.
it might be low. So there's the other thing, if the board votes on this at these numbers and then we get another larger increase, then we have to deal with that. So I think on page 2 here, Jerry could show the dollar difference is about, $200,000 in health insurance. I'm just looking at version 2 in front of us. Version 1. So you can see in 2025, we spent $1,075,000, just $1 million, we'll call it, on healthcare. This year, we're budgeting $1.4 million, and there is no savings there. This gets it gets fully spent. I forget what the phrase is for it, but like this is the cost of it. It's not like if somebody is not on the payroll, we don't get charged this. We're going to get charged this entire $1.4 million. So the 15% increase and then the personnel changes here as well make it 1.6. So it's about $250,000 right there. If that goes up double again, that's another $250,000.
So one of the other thing that I think the budget committee ought to, weigh in on is to get behind the pay scale investments. I think we've all talked about this in the board meetings, obviously, that we need to try to keep the pay scales moving upward, even if we can't match what we should be paying. And obviously that's the first recommendation here. So I'm hoping I don't hear any dissension on 5% and 2% for at least from the committee going forward. But I'm willing to entertain different opinions.
I think that's the roundabout point I was trying to get to, is that that's really the only place that there is a place that this committee and the full board can make a change, is with the level of raising of the pay scale there. So if we ran into a problem with healthcare, it would probably, and we had to adjust the budget, it probably would mean not moving the
The
pay scale
hours.
together.
Yeah.
It would probably mean not moving the pay scale together as well as we did this year, like not being able to do a 5% increase to the beginnings of each band and stage of the pay scale. And even that, if we talked, like we ran some numbers on, what if we did a 3% increase there and a 2% raise for staff, that saves $125,000, which wouldn't even cover the doubling of the healthcare. So I think this is mostly a question now to be talked about. which of these two versions, are we comfortable with this level of to Tony's point, the pay scale? And then whether or not there are other things to be discussed.
We have some stuff moving this year into being requested by our jurisdictions that were covered previously on equipment. Or,
I think that started last year, but we had software costs. Is this the first year?
The fiscal 26 current year budget.
So,
the first year we
yeah,
have
so
some.
okay, so it's already in.
In
Yeah.
this year, right?
Yeah.
Those, okay.
There were some software costs that had been paid for out of the equipment budget that we transferred over to the operational budget because they were not equipment needs, they were like email and other ongoing software needs.
And looking, I'm just gonna jump down to contracted services, which I see for 2026 budget is blank, but 2027, we're looking for 32,000. Can I get an explanation?
This is a moving target. Those three accounts, that one and the two below it. They're primarily costs that get charged to us for the city, by the city for
Okay.
various building things, and it's various people in the city making those charges, and they each pick different accounts. So it's really all same kind of costs lumped into any of those three lines. So I look at them as one line.
So I think if you look at it this way, Brandy, so there's what was spent in 2025, what's budgeted for this year, what's budgeted for next year. So if you look at these three, here's the 30,000 in this line, and then 8,200 is about, a little bit under 40,000. And then for this year, same thing, it's
Yeah.
32 and 10, here's 32 and 10.
It's just how it's all broken up.
Yeah, it's the same amount, but that's when you look at
Okay.
that minus 100%, it sticks out.
I just knew there was a cost that we were looking at removing that was around $5,000, and I want to make sure that was
Yeah, the only,
that
I think what you're referring to is probably the
collections.
Case management collection agency fee, yeah, which we've already stopped.
That's
So that was an equipment fund cost too. Thank you for reminding me. So that's saving that $5,000 in the equipment fund, so.
That's a co-an, so if you stop paying the collection agency, do they come after you for the
They
fee?
come after you for your.
Sorry.
This brings up an excellent point, though, that we probably should speak about today. In that whole discussion of the equipment budget, I'm gonna move down to the tech services local. What,
they're all critical, so it's at the end.
I'm sorry, library admin state is what I'm interested in, which is on page 10 of either one of these. So if you recall, JMRL gets the second largest or largest amount of state aid in Virginia, and largely that goes to pay for books and materials for the library system and for our users. Also, every year we carve out somewhere that line library supplies. It's like 35,000 was spent in 2025. That's for like stickers and covering books and barcodes and the materials related to getting the books out there. So last year, the library board elected to use some of the state aid funding to offset salaries at the administrative level. So it was shared by all 5 jurisdictions. And initially, we thought that was going to be $100,000, but then state aid came in a little lower than we were expecting. So it got moved down to $70,000 last year. That's at 71,179. What we're proposing for fiscal year 27 is that half of that be held in reserve to go towards the equipment budget as the proposal that went before the board. And it's not written in stone, but when I was talking about the potential ways to fund the equipment budget moving forward for year 1 of that, a quarter of the cost was going to come from state aid, a quarter from the Friends of the Library, and 50% from the fund balance. Yeah. So that's why that number is smaller. I said half, but it's really $25,000, I think. So maybe it is half. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right. To our chair, so how would you like to proceed? Do you want to go through each page and look at them and see if there are any questions? Do you want to?
I'm going to ask if we ask the the group, what they would like to do. I'm happy to go through page by page. I'm happy to have an overall recommendation if everyone has had a chance to look at the individual, well, neither have I. So,
Or if there are people who've already identified.
yeah, like Brandy's already identified,
Sounds like Brandy had a few more notes.
No, I don't. I'm just kind of going through and skimming.
Yeah. We can do that together.
Yeah. So what would the committee like to do?
I would like to go kind of page by page, just questions like.
That's fine, sure.
like,
Let's, so I'm gonna focus on B1 just because it's in the front of you. It's right up on the screen right here, and the only differences are personnel here. And just as a reminder to everybody, the top three categories here are regional costs. So these are shared amongst the 5 jurisdictions, and they're based on a 3-year average of circulation rates. So how people are using the collection there, and it's done that way in order to not have a big surprise one year, like if there's a, the new Nelson branch opened, it's rolled out over 3 years instead of being all at once. And the numbers for last year were just about 60% of use was from Albemarle County, 24% from Charlottesville, 6% from Greene, 5.75 from Louisa, and 4.28 from Nelson. So everything at the top are those costs for the administration of JMRL, the technical services, and 10% of the costs of reference services. That's written in the regional agreement there, that the jurisdictions share 10% of the costs, and the rest of it are Charlottesville Albemarle costs because it's housed at the central library. Same for the costs for Central, Gordon, North Side. Those are split between Charlottesville and Albemarle, and they're done by a 3-year percentage of use. So Central's collection used about 53.61% of the time by Albemarle, Gordon's 46%, Northside's 80%. And then you're looking at individual costs for the localities for their local branches until you get to Bookmobile. I misquoted you earlier, Martha, when we were talking. The 7837 for the Bookmobile includes personnel and the wear and tear. So it's I think I said somewhere around 15, it's 78.
Oh, so it's not
Oh.
the 8,000.
Correct.
I made a note to myself to ask you. You are correct now.
Tell me that I was wrong. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for not doing that in the public meeting. Yeah, so that's, I think Greene County will be very interested in that proposition. But we'll talk to the front.
And do we have an idea where that would be where?
Not at this point, no.
Yeah, I think
Because
that's
it
good.
seems like Ruckersville is the place that.
Definitely that was,
Yeah.
I think it would be similar to Louisa's, where they go all around the county, but they go twice to Zion's Crossroads. Because that's the busiest, most populous area. So similar for Ruckersville, it'd be like go out, stop on the way out, stop on the way in, something like that.
Yeah.
Hit it more than once.
And then see how it goes and change and.
Yeah, we've tweaked spots, like in Nelson County, a spot got moved from where Anita and I looked at it a few years ago. It was at the Piney River Trailhead, and now it's up in the shopping area near. But we haven't gotten to that point. So if the county says, yes, we're interested in this, then we would start a project to identify the best places to go. Split costs for the historical collection and for the Mont Ave, which is the Makerspace Lab. Eventually, this will get rolled into a central cost, but for right now, we'll leave it the same as traditionally this has been paid for by Charlottesville and Albemarle, so they know what's happening. Okay. So version 1, an overall 9.4% increase in the budget. Version 2, 8.6%. Everything is on this next page here. Have our name for it, but these are all the expenses and projected expenses. And as Jerry mentioned, this data comes straight from the software that JMRL uses to procure things and also to account for things. Safety is known as. So sometimes there are changes to names of categories or numbers, leads to that confusion that Randy was asking about. But are there any questions about any particular category here?
Professional services?
Primarily the audit.
Okay,
So we're paying more. And it's
getting less.
taking longer.
I just want to give David an opportunity to rag on the auditors. Thank you.
And I think this was the actual 2 years ago, and we only budgeted 7,000 last year, and we're anticipating that the cost.
Yeah, that's an
Yeah.
increased, the 17 was significant increase from prior years, so.
Right, right.
Does that mean it'll come quicker?
I'm sorry,
Will it come quicker?
let's see.
Yeah, apparently.
JMRL's audit is piggybacked on the city of Charlottesville's audit. They contract with an audit firm, and part of their contract is they must also do the library's audit. So again, those costs are a little out of our control, but certainly I can raise my voice about it.
That's Robinson Farmer at Cox.
Last year it was, yeah. The last
So
year.
it might change.
They have a running contract that they review every once in a while, so I think it's been Robinson Farmer Cox for the last maybe
2 or 3.
2 or 3 years. Before that, I can't remember the name of the outfit. I think, getting off topic, but I think that a lot of the firms that are still willing to do municipal audits are getting out of that business. So there are less and less firms that focus on that. So there's more competition. I know that name does like all the audits for most of the localities.
I think we've used them for 40 years.
Any other questions? I'm just kind of scrolling down. Numbers will pop out. The telephone line charges, this is Jerry, anything to add about the increase there?
Just following actuals. And nature of the timeline of the budget is, we're doing it from 22 months out, so.
Yeah.
Sometimes hard to tell that down.
Any questions on this overall before we move on to the individual branches and departments?
Are people printing less or? Because I see there's a $2,000 budgeted decrease.
Yeah, I think this is just for like what staff is.
Oh, what
printing.
staff is using? Okay.
Yeah. We pass the cost along for the public. We charge them. And that's a good question about paper for that. Is that an equipment purchase or?
I occasionally charge just for some of that to
Yeah.
equipment. We are printing somewhat less things. We're pointing people to online, and not doing color glossy necessarily.
Can I make a comment? When we do our deposit for the branch, we take a lot more money in for printing than we do for fines
Currently.
currently,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Good to know.
Fines get paid online. Yeah.
yeah, or it's paid online, but yeah, we take more money in for printing than fines.
So we'll move on to the bookmobile here. And you'll see kind of similar numbers as we go from branch to branch in terms of like what the increases are in the percentages there. So this one includes taking a part-time job and making it a full-time job, which is why there's a big jump in health insurance. There's a bigger liability for the library or bigger cost for a full-time employee than there is for a part-time employee. So it's not just the added salary of those extra hours, there's the added cost to be a full-time benefited employee.
David?
Yes.
Get away with that screen just a little.
Yeah,
That's better.
Even better.
this might be too big, but good suggestion. Okay, and next page, department, the Historical Society. Here. You can see, right, numbers are what you'd expect, so the 7%, 7%, 15% for health insurance. Well, why the 33% for retirement? So I mentioned this to the board the other day, that 3 years ago, the city changed the defined contribution retirement plan, which is the one that all new staff are on at JMRL. It's no longer an option to be on the pension plan. So that the initial plan, the plan that I signed in on was that the library gives a contribution towards a tax deferred, thank you, plan. That's the equivalent of 8% of your salary, which is a very nice retirement deal. They made a change a few years ago so that if you are with the organization for 5 years or more, that becomes a 9% contribution. If you're with the organization for 10 years or more, that becomes a 10% contribution. Now, for the last 3 years, since this has been instituted, JMRL has only paid 8% per employee because the city has been funding it out of forfeiture funds in the retirement plan. Lindsay's on the retirement commission. She can correct me where I'm wrong here, but
And that's going away.
that is going away. Those funds are now spent. So they spent it down. I think it was a very good use of spending it down to keep this cost the same. So this is the first year where JMRL is absorbing those costs. I think overall throughout the library system, it was somewhere around $30,000 to $40,000 total. But you'll see, like in this case, this is a one-person department. So that's the cost of one longtime employee going from the 8% to the to whatever their longevity matches there. So you'll see a few of those throughout. Central Library. So similar issue, you might ask why salaries are at 4% and not higher because of the increases there. It's because of job vacancies and new hires starting in at a lower rate for next year than we're currently budgeting for this year. Operationally, it looks like the costs are about the same, except Jerry wisely is including a little bit more funding for utilities, which were more than budgeted for 2 years ago.
We've already covered, I guess, this negative 100% for building and vehicle maintenance and city personnel and one-time building maintenance services.
You're looking at the bottom here.
Yeah.
It's being divided amongst all the jurisdictions, I think, on the second page.
Yeah, anything to say about this particular line?
Yeah, that does. Strike me as a little bit, but yeah, well, I'm not sure.
We'll take a look and make sure that I wonder if that's related to one of the projects that happened at Central in the last year or so. There was a fire pump replacement.
That's budget though, so I don't know,
Yeah.
as opposed to actual, but I'll check.
Okay. Always good to triple check. Crozet branch, the only increases are on the personnel side. Same issue with retirement here, why it's, not in line with 8%. I actually really like to see this number now because it tells me, that we have employees that have been at this branch for more than 5 years.
Right.
So it warms my heart. Gordon Avenue. Similar story. Oh, let's see, percent here then. You make a note.
Yes.
That one. Somebody do some quick math.
10%.
Also utilities here, which is to reflect. Actual spent, we spent 18,500 2 years ago, budgeted 18, but likely those are going up. This would be part of the checking on the other one. Green County. This doesn't include part of those bookmobile costs, those that are under bookmobile. This is just for the staff at the Green County Library. Same story with the retirement there. The rest of the numbers are in line with what we're talking about. Administration local. This does include the new, wait, does the new IT person, is that in this? No, they'd be in tech services. Yeah. The bump there in salaries and social security, then part of that is because we took half of that state aid funding away. So that was, about $40,000 that was kind of off the top, these costs for fiscal year 26. This is still minus the actuals are, because we're still gonna use some state aid supplement.
So is library admin, is this like all the libraries together? Like
This
a
is the-
blanket?
The regional administration, so it's like my job, Krista's job, Jerry's job. It's the administration of the regional library system. And then the operational costs here, these are the ones that got on that first grid sheet, got shared by those percentages at the top.
Okay.
Same for these operational costs here.
Jump and postage.
Yes, I just was getting ready to say that.
Postage.
Yeah. I'm looking at.
Well, you can see the actuals 2 years ago, it was 16 grand on postage and we budgeted 7. So 9 seems closer. Jerry, any insight on?
Sometimes it's just, if we're looking to spend money at the end of the year and we can
Buy
buy postage and
postage
it's still good into the next year, so on our postage machine, so, yeah.
Inquiring.
Postage.
Well, because I see on this page, but then there's also on this page, the overall categories. Because postage matches the operating expense account on this page matches what's on.
Yeah,
That's the only branch that charge to.
yeah, we don't charge, right?
We don't.
They send their
Charge postage to Louisa County, we
Yeah.
charge it to the administration.
They send the packages in and we put the.
I understand.
postage on.
Sorry, I'm a little slow on the uptake. Okay, yeah, so a lot of stuff on this page. Any questions besides postage? Less awards we're expecting for this year.
Dang.
The computer software. Yeah. Well, it jumped up from 54 to.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier, when it's where these costs landed when we took them out of the equipment budget. It's that.
Okay.
So in 25, we were spending out of the equipment budget for that. And this year, as Brandy said, the first year that we're not, and next year we're just gonna.
Second,
So.
okay.
Is the dues and subscriptions, like magazine subscriptions and stuff that the library gets for people to have on hand, or what does that relate
I
to?
think it's more like professional organization.
Yeah, any magazine sort of things would be in the books line.
We're collecting.
This would be like, we're organizational members at the Virginia Library Association. Is that the line?
Yeah, Chamber of Commerce, those sort of.
Yeah. Yeah, so if the library system's paying for a membership to an organization of some sort, VLA is the big one. We pay for that cost so that all trustees and employees are members of VLA automatically, and that means you get 500 emails a day.
Right.
Yeah, they're collecting through my inbox.
Library admin state, this is what we already referred to. I want to jump to it early so that you could understand. For the admin salaries line above, it's missing the difference between 61 and this 30 there, which is part of the reason that percentage is dramatic. But this is taking basically half of what we spent last year out of state aid on salaries to spend next year on salaries. So we're still going to spend some state aid on salaries, but less because the other half is going to go towards equipment. Louisa County. Reason that this is V1, the reason that the percentages are up over the average is because of the added hours. V2. Doesn't include quite those. And we did try to collect. There was a while where we were paying for 2 phone services in Louisa because we were having issues with one, testing out another one. And we're finally back to just 1 phone service, small savings there.
So I will say in Louisa, looking at the fiscal 27 proposed between the 2 documents,
Yeah,
the numbers are a little. Like life insurance on version 2 is 1708 and 1729, but it's only 11% adjustment, but knowing that's a small number. But I'm wondering if some of these percentage adjustments between
I think you might
26
be
and
right.
27 might be off.
Jerry, can you check on that?
Sure.
Well, in the end, like, I'm hoping that we're gonna end up with just 1 copy to send to the full board today, but we'll double check to make sure which. The numbers are right, but the percentages. Let's double check. Okay, Montreal Avenue, as we said, so part here is for the upgrading of those positions to reflect their.
So we're still calling it Monticello Avenue?
Just in the budget at this point, that's what the name of the cost center is in the software. You know, to get that changed, it's like when if you ever had to change your name on your social security card or something like that. Like it's,
I'm thinking about changing my Gmail.
yeah. I think, and we're still in flux a little bit here with the changes to the service. You know, we had the policy was still called Monticello Avenue until just now, and there's a few other things to happen before we come up with a rebrand there. So to me, this is the best way. Sharp, the funders for this, it's the best thing is to continue to explain it to them. But you're not the only trustee who has recently told that they would love to move on from the name to something that more reflects what's happening. Okay. Nelson County had some staff turnover recently, so we've got folks that are starting at lower salaries than what we had people leaving at. Which is good. But then we've also got the retirement bump there for the folks that are there that have been there for quite a while.
Yeah.
Side Library. Getting rent to go up. It goes down. Goes down.
So there's a line for medical supplies in every branch budget. Doesn't seem to be populated for 2026, 2027.
Yeah, that's a fairly new cost across all branches. 2 years ago, we started putting in state bucks primarily for employees.
Yeah.
So we started with having them charged to a central account. This is
Got it.
right in the bottom
Got
of the
it.
branches, so
Okay.
we're
All right, cool.
catching up to what it actually is being charged to.
Thanks.
Like they have a defibrillator and Narcan and Band-Aids.
Yes.
The defibrillators tend to be separate and provided by the jurisdiction that owns the facility.
Okay.
But yeah, the other ones have Narcan, Band-Aids,
Everything you could
tourniquets, yeah,
possibly want,
they're
really.
well stocked. We'll say it's
You
nice to
should come
have.
and visit one of them. There's a ton of stuff.
And we do use them for patrons as needed. It's not
Yeah.
like if a
Yeah.
patron's bleeding, we're like,
I'm so.
I'm sorry.
Did you bring your own band?
The nice thing about them is that Cintas sends a rep out quarterly that checks to make sure like Narcan expires, you know, so they'll remove the old Narcan and give new Narcan. And then
She comes
discharge.
monthly.
Monthly,
yeah, yeah. she
Yeah, and
checks it.
Band-Aids, if you don't use them up, they become unsticky.
yeah.
Yeah, she checks on everything and replaces things that need it.
I never have that problem at home.
Use 'em.
The company, well, They decorate with them.
Yeah, it's the car one.
These would be grandchildren?
Yeah.
On the Scottsville. So the only real thing here is retirement, and again, it's an issue with folks, and their longevity. Okay, page 16, technical services, local. These are the department's needs and salary. It's pretty on par. And then finally, the books from stated. And this is largely, I guess, at this point that we don't really know for sure until pretty late in the spring, sometimes into the summer. When the state has a budget next year. What I have been told from our friends at the state is that it's probably static. We're still holding out for that little teeny last bit to be 100% funded, and it was in the budget for last year and didn't make it, and the assumption is that it won't make it again, so it's static. Any questions about any particular item? We did the thing, we looked through all of it.
Hey,
Item by item. Note that the smaller items generate the more discussion. That's always my favorite.
Yeah, well, it's a good chance for, staff and trustees to ask operational questions too.
What the heck is that? Thoughts?
Does David use so much Advil?
Perfect.
Such a headache.
So I think what the staff on the committee are looking for is a recommendation from the budget committee on what to present to the full board, who is meeting a week early.
In Crozet.
Crozet, and voting on a budget, which I take it, Martha, you're not gonna be there.
no, what date is it?
November 17th.
17th?
I leave the day after Thanksgiving.
Oh, that, thanks.
Oh.
For some reason you said that and I thought Halloween, so I thought you were leaving this weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I would be fit to be tied right.
So you got a long trip, huh?
So what's on the table here are kind of, taking all the personnel committee's recommendations, taking the version 2 budget, which includes a few of those. A la carting those, going through them again, and then talking about kind of overall levels of increase to the pay scale. And what the budget committee is comfortable moving forward with.
I'd be happy to entertain a motion to go with either version 1 or version 2 or some variation thereof.
Personally, I would like to make the motion that we put version 1 forth.
Okay,
I would second that.
yeah,
If we needed it.
We can always change.
I think likely I will ask the board when they vote on the full budget to do what they did last year, which was allow me to make an adjustment for healthcare as it comes in.
Right.
But I'll come back to the board if it comes in a way that's unsustainable, then obviously the board needs to be.
Yeah.
So what I would like to ask
Yeah.
Jerry, you don't have your computer and stuff set up. But I'd be curious, I could probably figure it out myself. A 20% increase on that healthcare. Cause I'm
What the difference would be.
scared of that.
Doing math on the fly.
Yes.
It's gonna be great.
Thank you.
Let's see.
So.
Remember this number, so.
All right, we're looking at a total of $17, would be an additional $40 for 5%.
All right, that seems low. So let's see, right now the increase to make it to 15% is $16,100 per hour. And if we increase that by
5%.
5% per employee, it'd be 16,905. And that would be about $80,000.
What was the difference
Which would take
between
the
version
whole
one and
thing that
version
we
two?
took From version, yeah, the difference between version
Version one and version two.
Yeah.
The difference between the two is $20,000. The healthcare as presented at 15%. But my concern is last year we had that 30% after we had started to meet jurisdictionally. And while we did prep Louisa,
And this was 2 years in a row that we had met with Louisa and then had to come with a higher number.
And the other unknown in any of these budget things is how much rollover, I mean, we are limited by the amount of rollover we can do per year to 5%.
Correct.
But the number has indeed varied from year to year based on attrition. Sometimes, you know, there are less personnel costs. We may have right up at 5%. We may have a little bit of a cushion. We may not have a cushion. And we don't know that until the end of the actual fiscal year. So,
And generally, we're not budgeting. Historically,
Right.
JMRL has not budgeted to spend any of the fund balance there. This year, we will be for
Yep.
the equipment budget. And
Yep.
also, it's something that can be on the table for the board to discuss. You know, like carrying over 5% a year, whether or not, like currently, Jerry and I talk about this all the time. We budget for full staffing too. And, you know, that rarely, if ever, like since COVID, that has not happened. So
Ever.
or ever potentially. So if the board, if we got into a hole, we could look at the fund balance, we could look at other options rather than necessarily having to pass it all along to jurisdictional partners who are, if we're looking at a hole, they might also.
yeah, and I know Louisa's got some projects there.
They've got some high dollar projects.
Yeah.
They started floating a new elementary school.
Yeah.
Again, we just got Mouse Knuckles.
And eventually they're gonna need a new library too. For all those folks that are moving into the county, so. But we've been talking to them about that for years, you know,
We
we'll
have.
slowly build.
and if-
systems.
if Central's any indication, it'll be another 20 years before we get around to it. So,
And them data centers.
all
Okay,
right.
so I heard a general consensus for moving forward with all the personnel committees. Suggested recommendations.
Yes.
That's at version 1.
Mhm.
Okay, so there were a few notes that I had here today for Jerry and I to look at. To either give you answers or make sure we've got the right numbers in there. There's a pretty cover that Dylan made. So it won't just look like a spreadsheet. And I usually write an introduction, and then I think this year we'll also include that Sankey chart that Jerry showed on Monday with the flow in, flow out, with the budgeted numbers. If we can figure out how to make that. And then this group may have to meet again if something were to happen with healthcare, or if we run into issues after we start presenting this budget to our jurisdictions. Otherwise, we'll plan on meeting again in late spring to talk about equipment, which is going to be a bit different this year than years past because of the anticipated change for fiscal year 27.
Other questions, comments? Alita, is it time yet?
Are you looking for a motion for the
You need a
two?
motion, yeah?
Oh, you.
I'll
Who'd like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second,
Al?
yes.
Thank you all for working on this budget.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And making it clear.